This is the one and only David Faustino. I think this is the one and only David Faustino. I think you know that, aka Bud Bundy, aka the Grandmaster, the Grand Flasher, the Grand Bastard, the Grand Flasher, the gas passer. I think you get the point. More importantly, you are watching the Sanitarium with Leatherface.
Woke up in the sanitarium. In the ring, I feel like Leatherface. Run up, then I bury you. They know the vibes when I'm coming through. They told you lies, but we know the truth. Vibes, gotta let it loose. Yeah, I'm gone. I can't feel my face gone. You won't see my face gone. Feel like Leatherface gone. Feel like Leatherface. Sanitarium. Better get up, sick, make him spit up. Witch, cough his ribs up, bitch, bathe in his blood. Better get up, sick, make him spit up. Witch, cough his ribs up, bathe in his blood. Woke up in the sanitarium. In the ring, I feel like Leatherface.
This is Officer Bird, and you're traveling to another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. At the signpost up ahead, your next stop, the Sanitarium with Leatherface.
What's up, everybody? We're back. You have to excuse the little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning. Figures it would happen on the first show returning. Of course, the intro stops working. Jeez, story of my life, huh? Welcome back to the Sanitarium. Let me go ahead and add Mr. Phil here, too. Boom.
What's happening, brother?
What's up, man? He picks up some pussy right away.
Yeah, well, I don't trust any man who doesn't love pussy.
Yeah, there shouldn't be any funnily enough pussy on the Facebook. I think it's flag. So it is Saturday, June 3rd. It's starting to get hot as hell back here east in North Carolina. It's about 80 degrees, humidity about 100%. Feels like 120. Instant small bass.
It's heating up down here too in Florida.
Oh, that's right. You're in Florida. It's even worse.
Yeah, we're in the tropics down here.
Oh, jeez.
I said, but my girlfriend's gonna make fun of me for that one. Well, I'm excited about your guest tonight. You got a former Light Bird Lieutenant Colonel, intelligence officer, as you described him, a real life James Bond.
He is a real life James Bond. I mean, we've been following each other on Instagram for a while. And the very first, I seen him on Infowars and, on the news and stuff, years back. But when I really saw him on Instagram, it's a James Bond motherfucker. It's this dude coming out with a tuxedo. He's got a badass car. He got some hot chicks by him. I was like, man, this guy is James Bond. I don't think he don't have the English accent though, but he's definitely James Bond.
The American James Bond.
The best-selling author, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, has a couple books that he's written. I think he's written more than a couple. The two main ones, Operation Darkheart and The Last Line. He's gonna come on here shortly and tell us the story. And
I was doing a little reading. I heard the first 1,000 or 10,000 copies of his book. The government bought them all back and burned them because it supposedly had classified information in it. At least that's what they alleged.
Wow. Well, hopefully this got paid for it.
Well, yeah, I mean they bought them back, but
that's technically getting shit shelved.
Right?
But he got paid for it, although
exactly. And he's not in jail, so I really don't think it could have been classified information. Otherwise, he would have had a real problem legally for that. It's I know in the Marine Corps it was need to know basis only. So even if you had a certain level of clearance, you just loose lips sink ships.
Well, I believe he is definitely the second most dangerous person that's been here on the Sanitarium. The first one being Carol Baskin.
I wish I had been on with that one. I swear, I don't know why you didn't invite me with that one. It's
I had to talk to all the guys. I'm like, we gotta tone it down a little bit. No one be mean to this guy. He was, a secret agent, man, and I don't want you to disappear. So,
well, should we call him Colonel?
I don't know. What do you think, Tony? We can see you down there. We can't hear you, but nod your head up and down. Should we call you Colonel? I see a little bit of nodding. Okay. Oh yeah, but yeah, it's gonna be a good night. We got the new roundtable coming. Paul Dale Roberts, he is leading the roundtable talk from now on, second half of the hour.
Yeah, I didn't realize Paul had an intelligence background.
He does, and if you didn't know, Tony, Paul Roberts here has a Guinness World Record for the longest disco dance. He danced for I think it was for a week nonstop or something. I don't know. Isn't that weird?
Wasn't he trying to win a truck or something like that?
No, I don't know. I think he was just doing it for the Guinness record. I mean, they had good drugs back then, so I'm sure I could probably disco dance for a week too.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding, Paul.
Studio 54 days.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and go into our first fun little commercial thing here. Get a good laugh. Everybody get all ready to talk here. Come back with a little segment of Tony Shaffer, a little video I made, and we'll bring the man on.
Yeah, roll that beautiful bean footage.
Let's roll.
The best fudge comes from Uranus. Uranus, Missouri. That felt good. Tastes even better. Wow. Deep in the crack of America's heartland, the citizens of Uranus are bursting to give you their amazing fudge. That's right, fudge from Uranus. I'm not fudging with you. We're literally in Uranus. That's the mayor of Uranus, and you can get your fudge out the back door at UranusGeneralStore.com. And we're not fudging with you. I'm as serious as a fudging horse kick to the side of your fudging head.
I am as serious as forgetting your fudging anniversary.
I'm serious as skid marks on your fudging undies.
I'm serious as fudging a pregnancy test.
I'm serious as fudging the presidential election.
I'm serious as fudging the bar exam.
Uranus squeezes out so many different fudges that they have a fudge for everyone. They got blueberry fudge, chocolate fudge, vanilla fudge, chocolate pecan fudge, mint chocolate fudge, cookies and cream fudge, peanut butter fudge, M&M fudge, toffee bar fudge. There's a fudge for everyone. Right now I'm making the mayor's #2 favorite flavor of fudge. You can try some at UranusGeneralStore.com. Click now. That is some yummy fudge from Uranus. The best fudge does come from Uranus, Mr. Mayor. That's my dad. Go to UranusGeneralStore.com and order the best fudge and fudge this side of the Mississippi. And the other fudge inside, too. We can't contain it anymore. Uranus is about to explode across your screen and your front door. Ooh, fudge! Quit prairie dogging and order the best fudging fudge ever. Hey, Mr. Prairie Dog. So if digging for fudge in Uranus isn't your thing, then bring your fingers over here. Uranus offers a lot more than fudge. They got fudging magnets. They got fudging hats and the hottest fudging calendars of Uranus you've ever fudging seen. Ooh, that's cool. But if you ask me what the best part about Uranus is, other than the fudge in Uranus, it's the fudging shirts. Fudge not, lest ye be fudged first. Fudge, 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 fudge. Want to see more of Uranus? Come see the amazing attractions like the Moonicorn Creamery and Funnel Cakery. Fudge it great. Escape Uranus escape rooms. Fudgerific. Uranus Sideshow Museum. Hot fudge. Chicken Bones Party Bar and Grill. Fudge, yeah. So quit fudging around. How many more times do I need to say fudge to get you to order some fudge and fudge? Seriously, Uranus can't hold this fudge forever, so you might as well order some fudge today, for fudge's sakes. Go to UranusGeneralStore.com and order your fudge today. Or come down here and drop some deuces yourself. Peace.
Welcome to Uranus!
Let's make Uranus great again. Fudge, yeah. Fudge, 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 fudge. Fudge.
One of the great operative moments in my career was when I had an asset who was a bit of a control problem in the fact that he was very concerned about the environment being bugged by people who were out to get him. I had no hope of convincing him beyond a shadow of a doubt the room was bugged by anything I could do except for one little trick which I remembered. I had a pen in my pocket. I pulled it out. And I said, be assured, I will make sure that we can talk securely right now. I looked down at the pen and I simply clicked it to activate it, and then slowly, very slowly, moved around the room. 360 degrees to make sure that it was completely covered, came back around, steadied the pen very carefully, clicked it again, and said, it's okay, the room is clear, we're good to go. Thereby assuring the asset that we actually could move forward with the meeting. I was able to obtain the information, and he was none the wiser for the fact that all I had was an actual everyday pen.
All right.
Secret agent man.
So that's a pretty cool story. I mean, I want to know what kind of technology they really had. I'm sure it wasn't like Austin Powers and little command centers in the middle of cars that would pop up and they can have oil slick. And remember Spy Hunter, the video game, I'm sure.
I don't think they can really talk about what they have now. I mean, otherwise they'd be giving it all away. You know, it's
well, maybe we'll give him to give some of it up on the Sanitarium tonight.
Yeah. All right, we're bringing him on.
We bringing him on. Let me find my applause button. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for having
us.
Thanks for being here.
Good to be here. Thank you. And thanks for that great introduction. And the trick was appropriate by the fact that we were doing, this was back during the 90s, and it was actually in Key West, we were doing counter-drug operations. And the guy that I'm referring to in that segment was actually in fear for his life because we were trying to figure out what boats were carrying drugs. So it was dicey, and he was legitimately afraid that someone was going to get him. So it was a bit of a trick necessary to get him to give us the information we needed to go do some intercepts of some of the ships coming up through the transit zone. So it was a good op, if you will, that came out of that little trick for him. So
I'm sure you have many situations. Have you ever had any situations where you're like, oh shit, like a real oh shit moment for a special agent? That's what I like to know.
Well, dozens. Look, I mean, geez, what do I say? I started doing this when I was still in college. When I was, if you read Chapter 2 of Dark Heart, we kind of go through some of the stuff. I was recruited early on when I was still in college into something called a Key Personnel Upgrade Program, which was actually a program where they would find people they thought had potential to do things. And I was off to Germany working as an Army counterintelligence undercover guy, chasing terrorists in the mid 80s. As a matter of fact, the first set of operations, which kind of got me on the track I ended up on, was from stuff I had to do in Germany relating to counterterrorism stuff. You guys were probably not old enough to remember, but in the mid 80s, we actually had issues with the Russians were actually the Soviets were funding terrorist acts against us, using the Libyans as a proxy, actually funding groups like the sports group Hoffman, the RAF, the Red Army faction. Those people were actually killing troops. And so my first set of operations were to go undercover in Germany to set up what we call defense source nets, to go into the different towns with German intelligence officers as our partners and set up, they called it bar coverage, because you basically went to all the bars and you tried to figure out what was going on from the people who were visiting town. And we had a safe house and all that stuff. So I was still not even 20. I think I was 21 years old when I started all that stuff.
You started a little young on that one.
Yeah. It was the worst kept secret in college because I'd have to give orders to my professors. As a matter of fact, it's funny. You guys played a secret agent man. Charlie Funderburk, one of our wacky left-wing professors, was at an event. And somehow, by some miracle, I got into the Political Science Honor Society. How I did that, I still don't understand. But we were having an event. And Charlie said, this next song is dedicated to you. And it was the worst kept secret that I was off doing things. I was talking to one of my college friends yesterday, and she was saying, well, we never really believed the rumors that you were off doing spy stuff. It's like, well, I guess now you believe after all this time. So it was kind of interesting.
It's like, hold on 1 second. I hop in the phone booth and change into my outfit.
It was a great look. I had you guys paid for it. It's a great career. So I can't.
So tell us a little bit about Operation Darkheart. You got a picture of you when you're just a little bit younger.
Yeah.
Handsome fella.
By the way, we all go. I know I have to wear a uniform, and I was meeting with some of my military guys and gals today. We all go. Operatives all go by our first name. No matter what rank you are, we all go by first names. And it's just kind of special operations guys do it. We do it as intelligence operatives. We all go by first names. I mean, when I was meeting with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, it's Joe. And so we always go by first names. And so, so Darkheart was, you guys mentioned the issue with them buying up the copies. They bought up the copies because the book was cleared. The book had gone through full security review. And I had a piece of paper saying you can publish it. So the moment they issued that paper, it's like, I'm good to go legally. I've done everything I had to do to make sure that it was cleared. So what happened was those folks who didn't appreciate my being a whistleblower on 9/11 issues, if you guys recall, I did blew the whistle on the fact we had pre-9/11 intelligence on Mohammed Atta and several other the hijackers as part of an operation called Able Danger. Those guys are always vindictive. They don't like ever being called out. And so it was that group who I basically threw under the bus during testimony in 2005, came back and went after me over the book. So after the book was cleared by the Army, it was completely vetted, ready to go out the door. Defense Intelligence Agency, my former agency, who didn't like me. That's the hearings right there. That's in front of the Senate. And they basically went to the publisher and said, oh my goodness, there's secret identities of people in this book. The publisher said, it's clear. We got a piece of paper. The Army says we can print it. Oh, no. The Army missed it. So the publisher played the game. It's like, okay, fine. You've got 4 weeks to fix it. And so we were back, they bought up the first 10,000 copies and we went to the Pentagon for the next 30 days and bickered about these things. If you get the book, I mean, it's full of redactions. There's like 226 redactions. We won the lawsuit, by the way. We won the First Amendment lawsuit, which said basically you can publish. And so the publisher doesn't want to do a new book because the old book's still selling. Anyway, point being, we did everything right. We told them, sure, you want to put some black marks in the book. I don't agree with you. We're going to sue you over it. But, go ahead, knock yourself out. And they did it. And then in the end, when they got it done, they sent it back to the publisher with all the redactions. And I was out of the loop. It's like, my hands are clean. So they sent it to the publisher. The publisher got it and said, is this unclassified now? Well, it is unclassified. It's like, we're going to publish it just like you gave it to us to prove a point about how you all try to butcher this book. And Pentagon said, oh, no, you got to change all that now. It's like, no, you gave us something that's unclassified and we're going to print it just like you gave it to us. So that's why you see it was a defiant point by the publisher, by Tom Dunn. He actually notes this in the intro of the book that, hey, we cooperated and they butchered this. And this is not about security. It's about First Amendment, about them coming after me. And they published it. Next thing you know, Scott Shane over at the New York Times gets wind of it, gets me on the phone, and he asked me about it. And it's like, Scott, I really can't comment. It's like, well, we already know. It's like, we're gonna publish. We're gonna note the fact that the Pentagon went after you. And he said, congratulations, you're about to be a New York Times bestselling author. And I was like, what? I had no idea what was about to happen. And sure enough, New York Times and Fox News, first and last time ever, they worked together to break the story. My friend Catherine Herridge over at Fox broke it at the same time New York Times did. And it was amazing. And by the way, when they bought those 10,000 copies, they actually announced the destruction of burning the books on the day that the banned book week was. It's like their timing could not have been.
Well, burning books, that sounds familiar.
Burning books on banned book week is like, wow. That's I'll never forget. I was actually on with Don Lemon well before he got fired, just saying. And Don was on, it was, I think, a Sunday show. And he said, how do you feel about them coming after your book? I said, I want to send flowers to the director of Defense Intelligence Agency. I mean, I couldn't pay for this advertising. It was great. And they just wouldn't listen. It's like, we warned them every step of the way. You do this. This is what's going to happen. No, we're just going to do. Oh, okay. So thank your government for clearing my book, paying $10,000. No, paying, I don't know what it was. It was a lot more than that for the first 10,000 copies. And then literally every step of the way, stepping on their own schlonz, trying to get at me. Every time they did it, they just increased the popularity of it. So, and by the way, it's a great book. People really do and like it. It reads like an adventure novel, and it actually has the benefit of actually having happened. So, look, people ask me all the time, how do I get that kind of free advertising from the government? It's like, I have no idea, because it was all them, and they wouldn't listen to what we were trying to tell them not to do. So,
yeah, you can't buy that kind of publicity.
No.
So how much of the book, like percentage wise or line wise, is actually redacted?
Well, it's 226 redactions. The percentage is probably fairly short. I mean, people still know what's going on. I mean, they went after things like and A team. I mean, who doesn't know what an A team is? Mm-hmm. And I described one of the knuckleheads in Bull looking like Ned Beatty. It's like they actually redacted Ned Beatty. It's like, what? I can't talk about how someone looks. And then he took out all the names. Like they made us change the names. Like, for example, I'm very close friends with all of the characters in the book still. One of them is Jose Oliveira, Colonel Oliveira. He's now retired. He was my boss. And in the book, he wanted to be in the book. The guys with me who helped collaborate with the ghostwriter, with Jackie Salmon, who's my ghost on it, they wanted to be in the book. They wanted their names in the book, and the Pentagon wouldn't let them. So Juan Negro is Jose Oliveira. So they made us change all the names, which is stupid, because there's nobody undercover in the book. We all had permission from the individuals to have their name in the book. So it was just an exercise in how vindictive the Pentagon can be if they don't like something you're doing. And it was a big lesson for me to understand how these guys, if they've got power and they can find a way to abuse it, they're going to abuse it. But again, I benefited from it, so I can't complain too much.
Well, I think the deep state's gone well beyond, Anthony Shaffer. They're definitely out for world destruction compared to what's happening now. Oh, he's grabbing something. I see you, Tristan.
So you guys can flip through it. I mean, it's not, like, oh, there's a big paragraph there.
Right there.
How am I supposed to read it with no pretty pictures? No, I'm just kidding.
It's got a scratch and sniff. If you go to the back, it smells like a prayer rug from being in a can.
I thought it has some James Bond.
So you can figure out what's going on. So anyway, but they helped make it into a bestseller. And then to your point, it's like one of my friends, Dr. Chris Lehman, said I was the actual Jack Bauer with an intellect instead of James Bond. So either one, whatever.
Yeah, also being a contributor on Newsmax. I've seen you on Fox TV.
I am a Newsmax, yes.
I originally discovered you on Infowars when I was working with Infowars as well, doing videos and on-spot reports as an alternative reporter.
I used to enjoy being on with Alex and the guys on Infowars. So
it was fun. I mean, I was working with Dr. Group on a project, and I mean, there's some really, really good people there, and I hate to see them go through, because what can be done to them can be done to us.
Exactly.
And the censorship that they've I mean, what Alex Jones been right about, I can't memorize the list that long.
Right.
I mean, he's been right about a lot of stuff.
Right. I agree. And I used to be on with him all the time. As a matter of fact, I was on right before the 2016 election with him, talking about the fact that Trump was going to win, and nobody seemed to believe us back then. So, but
Hillary, I noticed back then, she was. I remember Bill was doing his little hoppity dance. You're gonna win. I mean, they were so used to stacking the machines and doing all the voter fraud they'd done in the past that she didn't overshoot it. That she thought, she was so far ahead, and they didn't stack them cheats up.
That's right.
And when the next day rolled around and that big diesel truck full of 200,000-300,000 votes didn't show up for her, she was screwed. That was all she wrote. And she's still whining about it. But at least she wasn't screwed as bad as who was.
But to your point, it's like they'll come after anybody they think will jeopardize kind of the way they think the world should be. Everything from utopianism, their belief on how we should live our lives, to how they think we should think. And the COVID thing, I don't know if you guys want to get COVID thing, but the COVID thing was a test of how many people were willing to comply with complete insanity. You have to line up and be in line and separate while you're in line, but you get into the store, you can walk around, do whatever the hell you want. It's like, it's just total insanity.
Nancy Pelosi making a big stink, and here she is getting her hair done, no mask.
Yeah.
You know,
It was
hypocritical bullshit. What do you think, Phil?
I'm thinking about the Colonel mentioned, in the 1980s, a war by proxy, and the United States has a long history of that, going way back before the 1980s. I just wondered, from your perspective, how many of the wars or conflicts that we've been in, just since World War II, have been literally the United States versus Russia playing, done on somebody else's, in someone else's country?
Well, this is a tough question. I'm not a neocon, and I learned a lot through my service about how many useless military actions we engage in as a country. And I'm not a pacifist, but I do believe that we should be prepared to defend ourselves. But the idea that we use foreign policy, military action as a foreign policy tool is not something that's wise. I think it does make us the bully on the block, and it's created a lot of problems for us. There's some legitimate, I think World War II was legit. I think we had to do things to defend.
Absolutely,
no doubt, the greatest generation. They fought for the right reasons. I can understand Korea because there was miscalculation, but there's so much miscalculation that gets us into trouble. I think our biggest danger right now with Ukraine is miscalculation. Someone not understanding the language of the Cold War. Joe Biden does not understand the language of the Cold War, and that's what Putin's talking to us in Cold War language. Biden ain't listening.
Oh yeah.
And that's the danger here. But things like the Tonkin Gulf, it's been well proven now that Johnson expanded the war in Vietnam. I feel, and please don't take my words as diminishing the valor and service of those who served in Vietnam. Everybody served to the level that they thought was necessary to defend the Republic. And I think this has been an issue often in wars where people will show up, take the oath, believe that they're doing the right thing for the nation. So you can never fault the individual for trying to do what they believe to be the right thing. I fault some of those politicians who get us into stuff that don't recognize consequences. A quick story on that. So, and I want to answer your question fully. Tony Zinni, General Zinni, was the commander of special operations of Central Command under President Clinton. And he told me a story once. We were working together on a project, and he just kind of spouted out this story about how he dealt with Bill Clinton on this. Bill Clinton would come to him and say, "Hey, General Zinni, can you do X? Can invade this country or do something?" And Zinni would say, "Yeah, but then what? What are you going to do? What's the plan after that?" And we have a foreign policy which leads too often with military action without understanding what's going to happen once you use that action. And again, I can't fault those who execute the missions if they believe that those are legitimate missions. The problem is the politicians, John McCain's, Lindsey Graham's, who are the ones who really want to shoot first and ask questions way later after we've already got into some trouble we don't want to be in. So,
well, I'm telling you, I mean, I'm sure a question that a lot of people will probably ask: how close do you think we are to a nuclear exchange with Russia?
So that's a great question. Let me state this because I always get in trouble because people think I'm pro-Russian. I'm not pro-Russian. Vladimir Putin is a thug. He's literally murdered by his own hands reporters in elevators in Moscow. The guy is a true thug. So don't take these words as being pro-Russian. Russia will not lose the war in Ukraine. They will go to whatever lengths necessary to secure what they believe is their territorial imperative, which is those Donbass and all the region that they're currently occupying. If there's a time where they think that's in jeopardy because Joe Biden is seen as so weak, they are calculating, that is the Russians, are calculating that they could lob off a couple of nukes to basically make the point that they're not going to be trifled with, and they believe there'll be no response. So the idea of a nuclear exchange is more about the fact is do the Russians think they can use it and get away with it? Putin, I think, does think that because of the serial failures of the Biden administration. Miscalculation and lacking credible deterrence is the greatest danger to peace at this point. So the issue is not us. The issue is what does Putin think he can get away with? And I think that's where the real danger comes in right now.
If Putin were to die tomorrow, because I've heard he's not well, or at least there's been those rumors.
Right.
Is there somebody behind him that is probably is going to step up and be just as aggressive as him, or is he kind of alone in his zealousness to recreate the Soviet Socialist Republic?
It's a great question. Yeah, he's inculcated around him a lot of folks who think like him, to include the former prime minister of Russia. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the guy that, remember, you've seen him. He was on the stage with Obama. Obama whispered to him saying, tell Vlad I need, once I'm reelected, I'll have more latitude. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's like-minded to Putin. There's enough folks at the very top who are very like-minded. The Russians aren't hard to understand if you understand Russians. Russians have been like they are since the czars. What they believe, the basic philosophy is what's ours is ours, what's yours is negotiable. That's the way the Russians look at the world. And especially regarding what they believe to be their sphere of protection. They need a sphere around them because they've been invaded several times. They're paranoid as a culture. And so there's enough folks at the top who feel the same way as Putin does at this point. They're far more nationalistic than they are communists or whatever they are now in this hybrid democracy that they have. So I think there's enough folks who would think like Putin to keep it going no matter what.
What throws me off is you have all these, war generals with hard-ons to want this Cold War, and it's like, do people realize if we all shot these nukes off that none of us are going to survive that?
So let me tell you a little secret, and it's not so little secret. So I used to work on something called Bulwark Bronze. It's an exercise that's done every year in Omaha. It used to be done on the old SAC, the Strategic Air Command. It's now done as a part of a larger global nuclear exercise. We exercise nuclear exchanges. We've done this since the early days of the Cold War. We still do it. And let me tell you something. Every time a nuke is used anywhere in the battle space, no matter what the conditions are, maybe it's just a tactical nuke, it's, here or there, anytime a nuclear weapon is used, it always results in full-scale escalation and a full exchange of nuclear weapons between whatever the adversaries are. Every time we've exercised it. So there's nobody in my circle who believes that a nuclear war is quote unquote winnable. It's madness. And the consequences, I don't know if you all have watched the movies, Threads, the British movie Threads, or The Day After. I can tell you it's worse, far worse. The conditions will be far worse than either one of those movies if we go to that.
And that's why I just laugh at Lindsey Graham. I think he's a big pussy, to be honest. I mean, it's easy to sit behind a camera thousands of miles away and talk shit. But
he's a one-star lawyer now in the Air Force.
Jeez. Putin, he's a thug, but he don't fuck around, and that's what they don't realize is I'm not a Soviet or a Russian supporter, big supporter myself. I do understand some reasoning behind things, and you have to be. He did warn for us to stay the hell out of this.
You have to accept their you have to accept their understanding of the world. You don't have to agree with it, but you have to accept the fact they see things differently than we do. One of the other things I fault us for is we have we project our culture and our beliefs onto others, and it's like it got us in trouble in Afghanistan. I've advised multiple ISAF commanders of the forces in Afghanistan. It's like, you guys are reading the Taliban wrong. You're reading the Afghan people wrong. And if you really want to win, these are the things you ought to do. As a matter of fact, if you read Dark Art, the last chapter is the path to victory. And they almost took it. Mike Pompeo almost implemented what I wanted them to do regarding getting us out of there. But again, if you don't understand the culture and you're messing with it, bad things are going to happen. And I think we've done that with Russia. Russia warned us what they were going to do. Putin basically said, if you keep taking terrain, if you allow NATO to expand east, we're going to do something. And so everybody ignored it. It's like, no, we're not going to listen to you. So,
isn't it natural though for the Ukraine to want to be part of NATO? I mean, they declared their independence in 1991, and they've had to fight for it, and they've slowly lost, ports and everything else until then. And I mean, I know here I am projecting American values on another country, just like you mentioned, but I mean, that's what makes us Americans, the fact that we threw off the shackles of British tyranny and made our own country. And then we've encouraged so many other countries to do the same thing over the years. It's at least understandable that that the Ukraine would want independence. I mean, they weren't always part of Russia, no matter how far back you go.
They've always been within the Russian satellite as one of the satellite states since the 19th century. And I'm not here to debate if it's right or wrong. It's just that's the way the Russians look at it. Yeah. And certain areas within current Ukraine have predominantly Russian populations. And that was one of the excuses. To be honest with you, the reason Putin did what he did back in 2013, a number of surveys were done that discovered all sorts of natural gas and oil resources within the eastern part of Ukraine and the Black Sea. So the moment those things were discovered, multiple parties wanted Ukraine to go into their sphere. Victoria Nuland and Obama wanted Ukraine in the EU. That's why you saw the color revolution in 2014. Ultimately, this is about resources. Does Putin really care about Russians and Ukraine? Probably not. I don't think so. I mean, that's the excuse he's giving, but I don't believe it. It's about resources. What they saw coming, because these are huge resources. You guys know Ukraine's a huge place. So they saw the potential. That is, Putin and his oligarchs saw the potential that if allowed to continue as an independent nation, especially those regions we're talking about, eventually there would be a net competitor regarding the gas and oil resources, which the Russians depend upon for all of their spending, essentially, all the money they produce. So that's what this is all about. Don't liberate. Yeah, okay. That's the justification. The real issue is economics. This is always about blood and treasure. This is the treasure that they're worried about. So Putin, I believe, finally acted because he saw the potential for an EU-centric Ukraine that is able to produce all these oil and gas resources that would eclipse Russia eventually and defund their whole economy. So that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned.
Do you think how much of a part do you think drones are going to play in future warfare?
Huge.
Ukraine has used them to a huge, really had great success with them considering their limited resources. And I know, obviously Russia is huge and won't stop until they want to stop.
Right.
But just wait. The AI intelligence is running the drones. And then we got Skynet situation.
You are right. The AI thing, I think, is way ahead of what people understand what a threat that is. And to your point, everything we have that's electronic has a little chip in it, a little brain in it. And AI is way further ahead than I think people understand. One of the Google scientists has actually said that there's a sentience that Google's created, and it's learning. You guys, I was actually referring this to another friend tonight. You guys may want to go back and watch Colossus, the Forbin project from 1970, where it talks about a sentient computer deciding to just kind of do what it's designed to do and not worrying about humans. And then there's other, obviously the Terminator and Skynet. These things are here. It's not like it's just all theory. These things are here. If you combine big data to understand patterns of people, Amazon, eBay, Twitter, every big company that uses data has made a virtual you. They've made copies of us virtually. And what they do with those copies is for purposes of commerce. You guys see this. You tap on you tap on my book, and next thing you know, on Amazon, you've got 5 other books like it. Those avatars of you are manipulated by the algorithms to try to convince you to put the information back to you to do something, to modify or mitigate or promote behavior. Every company's done this, and we sign it away. When you sign a little release, you give them permission to build a copy of you.
Yep.
And so these virtual yous are out there being used against you by big tech all the time. And so we believe, this is one of my think tanks where I run, Project Sentinel, believes that we need to refranchise who we are, our data, because big tech Google has made billions off of other people's data, and and I use Gmail. I'm as guilty as everybody else. They've made billions off your data, and you combine that with the new AI. AI can do things amazingly quick that no one can even get ahead of potentially. And I think this is where not understanding how AI functions and not understanding how this could basically do things to not only go after behavior, but then start interfering with your appliances. It's quite the toxic brew. And I don't think anybody understands how it could go off the rails very quickly.
Does one country have the technological advantage anymore? I know for a long time the United States did, but then everybody always steals from us and makes things.
So, technology is ambivalent to the country or the user. It's more about who can understand it and adapt it most rapidly. In my 30 some years, the groups which most quickly adopt new technology are criminal organizations, because they don't have bureaucracy to deal with, at least not like we do, drug cartels, and terrorist organizations. Those things are typically at the forefront of new technology. And then rogue nations pretty quickly pick it up. So I think it's very clear that we, the United States, don't necessarily have the edge, but I think we have a good understanding because so much of what we do creates these new technologies. We were Stratus Ivy, which is that right there, was my unit that did the first undercover cyber work back in the 90s for DoD. We did a lot of field testing advanced technology for NSA and other organizations. And I can tell you, based on what we could do then, we're talking 23 years down the road here. It's far worse than I think people fully understand of what can be done with technology. And I'm not sure if we have the edge, but I can tell you we are reluctant to use a lot of the things we have. But Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, other nations are not so reluctant to do things. And I think that's what makes them more dangerous, if nothing else.
We sorry to keep asking so many questions.
No, I'm here.
I'm really enjoying the conversation. I spent time in the Marine Corps myself, and we had our own heroes that we always worshipped. Dan Daly, Smedley Butler, Chesty Puller. Smedley Butler is a real interesting character, and he wrote a book called War is a Racket.
Right.
And I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm just wondering, to what extent worldwide is that really still the reason to this day why all these conflicts are going on? You just mentioned the natural resources in Ukraine being Putin's prime motivator. Does it really always come down to that?
I think it does in many instances. For example, the issues with China right now. I disagree with some of my colleagues on China. China is an immense nation which is looking at how it's going to manage its population. The Chinese population is used to totalitarian governance. Before the communists, they had dynasties run by dictators, essentially. So they're used to having someone strong in power. It's nothing new. I've actually been studying Mao and all the different things that happened between World War I, World War II, and into the later part of the 21st century. And the Chinese used to fight amongst themselves before they had outside enemies during the century. Basically, the Chinese at this point do believe that they have to find a way to continue to provide for their population. They've raised expectations by giving their middle class real hope. They've built these huge cities. They have all these things going in there. They import a lot of oil because they produce everything. If you go to Home Depot or a Lowe's, like 80% of what you see has been built in China, made in China. And that requires them to have a huge economy to benefit their people. Also to basically take the resources we pay them to build up their military. And at this point, they're more nationalistic than they are communistic. That is to say, the Chinese believe, the Ming Dynasty had all this dominance around the Pacific. Our law is older than yours. We just want it all back. So they're going to take it, I think, one way or another. They want to do it by soft means first, by encroachment and expansion. But it is going to be ultimately about two things for the Chinese: water and food. Right now, the Chinese spend as much on finding and maintaining and expanding potable water for their people, billions of people. This is no small issue. They spend as much on water as they do on their defense budget, believe it or not. And the second thing is, how do you feed all these people? You've raised expectations. You put them in cities. You've got to feed them. So there's a big competition right now for fish. That's why you see these periodic face-offs between coast guards of the Philippines, Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, because they're all competing for the same fish. They've all got large populations. And so these are the things which are really going to drive the Chinese thinking. Do they want Taiwan? Oh, yeah, they want Taiwan. But they think of that as an economic resource, and to invade would potentially actually degrade the value because of the this is it's a complicated issue.
Very complicated. Well, Tony, it's time to go into the round table. We're at that halfway point. I'm going to go with one other commercial, and we will be right back with the round table. Where's the damn commercial at? Where's it at? Damn it.
Come on,
I can't find it. There it is. All right.
Not everything is as it seems on the surface, as this family's about to find out.
Are we there yet? Mom, Timmy's pulling my hair.
Timmy, stop it.
Are we there yet? I gotta use the bathroom. Me too.
Well, kids, I told you to go potty back at the house.
Oh, look, honey, we can pull over in a couple miles and let them pee in Uranus.
Yeah, Dad, I want to pee in Uranus. I want to pee in Uranus too, Dad.
Look, honey, the billboard says Uranus is only a couple miles away.
Look, it says the best fudge comes from Uranus.
That sounds delicious. I sure hope they pack my fudge better than your dad does.
Well, I'm sure we'll all learn a few things in Uranus.
I want to try all the fudge in Uranus. I hope they have mint fudge in Uranus.
I'm so excited to be in Uranus with the kids.
And I can't wait to pull into Uranus. I want to be in Uranus.
Fudge, yeah!
If you live too far away to let your family pee in Uranus, don't worry. You can order your fudge online at www.uranusgeneralstore.com. I'm gonna go pee in Uranus right now.
Fudge, yeah!
What's up? Hope you've enjoyed the show. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer in the house. Bad enough, I tell you what, bad motherfucker. So as you all know, the second half of the Sanitarium, which we're a little overdue, but it's okay. We're not in a hurry. Knock it off, Tristan. Making me laugh the whole damn show doing dumb shit. But tonight, brought to you by Mr. Paul Dale Roberts. I'd like to welcome you all to the round table. And I bring all my friends up here, and we talk it out. So let me get the echo in my voice here. Hold on. I gotta make it cool for my intro. You guys ready? So first we have Paul Dale Roberts. There's the background. Cool. We got motherfucking Phil. Where's my echo? There it is. Executioner. Next up, we got Tony. Yeah. Next up, we got Mr. Pops, Ron Trammell, and BFF for life. We got Terry the Tank and Tristan, which has a very unusual name this time. We have Tristan Purple Sticky, aka Big Dick Rockstar.
Woo!
Such an appropriate name for tonight.
I thought I'd be like PC.
Yeah, I told everybody to take it easy. I'm like, you know what? If you want to drink, that's cool. If you want to smoke, go ahead and be cool, but don't be holding up the bong and going. I'm sure you heard me coughing. You heard me coughing earlier, right? I had like 3 people hit me up. Dude, you're coughing on a bong rip. Stop.
Yeah, we all heard you coughing.
Yeah, it was just me choking on some coffee. You know, I swallowed some.
Sure. Yeah.
Shut up, Bill. Shut up. Shut up.
Happens to me all the time.
I know, but it does. But, excellent night. We got Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, best-selling author, And this guy's a real James Bond, guys. Be nice, because if you disappear, it ain't my problem.
I don't work for the Clintons.
Oh, that's a good thing.
You know, there's one. At least there's one more there.
Well, I guess in that case, what's that, Maurice?
You got one more down there.
Who did I miss?
You missed
Oh,
somebody.
I missed somebody. I'm missing somebody.
Yeah, there's.
Oh,
there's-
shit. Oh, I
Yeah.
feel bad now. Here's
I don't think we have enough
Wrangler Dave. Sorry, I forgot you.
Yes.
What's up?
What's up? Dude, you're like at the very bottom. I had to scroll down. I couldn't even see there was a third set.
Yep, that happens.
I scroll down. I see him like.
I got to thank the Colonel again for being such a good sport and hanging in there.
No, I do this all the time. I appreciate the opportunity to try to explain things. I mean, I do this every day. I've done this for 40 years, so I'd like to believe that all my misspent youth and all the money you guys spent allowing me to have this great career is going to pay off by helping to educate people at this point in time. So.
How many languages do you speak, by the way?
I only speak two: Portuguese and Spanish. I went to high school in Lisbon, so I butchered my way through learning some Portuguese.
How'd you do Germany then?
Germany, I actually was working with the Bundeswehr, so I didn't have to worry about speaking the local language too much. And by the way, strangely enough, most people speak English now, so it is still the dominant language on the planet.
With them borders open the way they are, I'm sure not much longer. All right, I'll shut up. All right, I had to. I couldn't help it.
I have a question, Tony.
Sure.
Shit.
So you were talking about after like nuclear war, right?
Big boom.
Earlier.
Yeah.
And you were saying like the what you know like result wise is different from what was in the movies.
No, I'm saying the results in the movies, well, it's far worse. I mean,
okay.
If you go back and watch Threads, it is a horrific movie. It basically shows how England would fall apart in a nuclear exchange and the devastation. And then also the day after. So I'm just saying that if Hiroshima bombs are nothing compared to the bombs today. You're talking about megatons. We're talking about an order of magnitude worse. So a 10 megaton blast going off in New York City. And then just the breakdown of society. People are going to be begging to have been killed in the initial blast.
And that's just one blast. That's assuming you only get hit with one.
Well, so my question is, so like, where do you think, in our reality, where do you think we are in this situation? Do you think we're close to something like that, like a breakdown in society anywhere in the next like 3-5 years, something like that?
Philosophically, this may sound strange coming from me, but I think you guys dig it. Look, we're in a multiverse. There's multiple things happening in different universes all the time. I think we are all kind of tied to a single set of outcomes. And a lot of this has to do with personal choices of individuals who have the ability to influence things. I'm a big Reagan guy. I believe that individuals can make a huge difference in the course of history. And at this point, a handful of folks could make big mistakes that could put us down a path where bad things happen, or we can go the other way where we come through just fine. I don't know, but I think that the potential for miscalculation, like knuckleheads like Biden, who just I don't think would care if you lose half the population of the world. I think those guys all think like that. Klaus Schwab, you ever seen that guy? I mean, that guy.
Oh man, that guy is too much. You're gonna have nothing, and you're gonna love it.
These guys are seriously that evil. I mean, it's just pure evil. The idea, you guys are all like down to earth. I'd hang out with you, go to the bar, go to we have here in town in Edenton, North Carolina, where I'm at. We have vinyl night. We could go down and do karaoke together. We'd have a great time.
Oh, I'm so down. A little bit of moonshine. I'll sing.
It would be great. No, I'm telling you, it's a fun play. And my point is, these guys don't think like us. These guys are all masters of the universe, and they think somehow that we're a resource and they can do things to us. And that's why you have people like Schwab and other things. So it's them and what they believe they can get away with, I think, which is the greatest danger to whatever timeline or multiverse strand
We just need to grab all these George Soroses, all these old crippled fucking Disney cartoon villains, and just fucking
Decrepit old crotches.
Yeah,
I mean, it's they're ridiculous. And just to think, George Soros has a younger son that's taking his place. I mean, Soros is what 120 by now. I mean, it's just the bloodline is going to keep going over and over and over until it stops.
That's right.
It's going to be the same shit another day in Japan.
So, I had a question for Tony. So we're talking about nuclear weapons, right? Well, I don't live that far from a major Air Force base in California called Beale, home of the Dragon Lady and things like that. What about the what they called mutual nuclear destruction?
Man.
So if Russia launches, that's going to happen, right? It's going to be basically mutual destruction of everything. We're going to launch, and all the other countries with weapons are going to launch, right?
That's how the exercises have all gone. So basically, again, we've been exercising this for since the beginning of the time we had nuclear weapons. The other sides have had them. So what typically happens, I'll give you a scenario. Typically, a battlefield nuclear weapon is used somewhere, either in the Pacific to take out a fleet, on the battlefield in Europe, a small exchange. And because one party doesn't like the fact that they just got their clock cleaned by a nuclear weapon, they launch. And there's two types of targets: counter force, counter value. You live, for better or for worse, you live next to what we call a counter force target. A counter force target is one which has military value: an Air Force base, a fleet, a formation of troops. The theory is nations start off using tactical nuclear weapons on counter force. They're trying to knock out the other's military forces ahead of when they can be used. That was the whole premise of mutually assured destruction. Mutually assured destruction is the term. And deterrence was what, the force on force is what kept everything at bay. And it worked, for better or for worse. Deterrent strategy, there's a whole series of war college classes on this. I don't want to bore you with kind of the theory behind it, but that's technically
Not at all.
So what you're talking about, though, is the exchange expands past counter force. So they get done taking out all the military targets, and all they've got left is what we call value, counter value targets, which are population centers, industry, commerce, all these things which drive society. And inevitably, whenever you start this going up the scale to take out counter force targets, it spills over and goes into counter value, and there's a full exchange because nobody knows how to stop. And I think that's what the biggest danger is, to exchange. And unfortunately, you'd be one of the guys toast pretty early in a nuclear exchange, just saying.
Well, one question I was going to ask you earlier, I know we got into China. We didn't quite get into the spy balloons like I wanted to get into, but I'm just going to ask you straight up.
Yeah.
Do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in extraterrestrial life?
So I read a book a few years ago called The Day After Roswell. You guys familiar with that?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
That's Corsi. Yep.
I'm stupid.
So I took that book back when I was an operative at DI, and I took it to some of the graybeards, the older guys. And I said, how accurate is this book? And I gave it to him. And basically he read it and he came back and said, it's 80% accurate.
Whoa.
So basically this is my thinking. If it's 80% accurate, that means the premise of the book, which was something happened at Roswell, really happened. So I do believe.
Kelly, turn this shit down.
Shut up. We're good.
Kelly, it's too loud. Turn it down.
I got it. Go ahead. You're good.
No. So if Colonel Corsi's observations are correct, I've talked to a lot of folks. Nobody will out and out deny what he says in that book. So if you accept that book is 80% accurate, the basic premise is that something did happen in Roswell and that other things have happened. And I do believe that this rash of UFO sightings are real. I actually saw. I've never talked about this before publicly, and I'll just go ahead and put it out there. When my dad was in the Air Force, and we spent time at Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old, I remember one day at Clark Air Force Base, a large, I've never seen a picture of this in popular media, but it was like it was a very large black object, and it was a ball, a big black sphere tied to another big black sphere, tied to a third big black sphere with a pipe or connector going between the two spheres. This thing, by my estimate, was about, I don't know, about 250 meters long. Floated over Clark Air Force Base at a very deliberate pace. And I sat there and it's like, I have never seen a picture in popular media. And I actually, try to call the base radar and everything else, trying to find out if they saw anything. But it was a cloudy day, and so based on my experience, yeah, I think there's definitely things going on that cannot be explained by any technology that we currently have access to within conventional spaces. So,
well, if you look at the current recent news article that came out was, I'm really bad with names, but they were saying something about they expect there's a mothership with like probes into our solar system coming this way, and they're letting out.
Well, you guys advertise Uranus, so I guess you know all about that, right? Probes.
Hey,
Yeah,
Colonel.
sure.
Colonel.
Well, so speaking of
They're here for the fudge.
speaking of
Uranus,
Oh, I have one question real quick.
yeah, that Paul. This is Paul's. This is supposed to be
Paul.
Paul's roundtable. We'll take it over.
I know,
Sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, Colonel. In the 1960s, supposedly some UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs, whatever, shut down some nuclear warheads over in Montana. Do you think there's anything factual to that information, or is it just something that's like an urban legend?
Drugs.
No, I think in many of those instances, there's things going on that we cannot explain. The underwater phenomena, I think, is something that is way understudied. And I know there's people in Hawaii and things like that. By the way, here's the book I was referring to, Day After Roswell. For those who have not seen it. I highly recommend it. It's a great read. And if you believe this, then I think you have to consider everything. But back to your question, no, I think there's Arthur C. Clarke, I can't remember, I think it was him, he said, any civilization more advanced than us, their technology could appear like magic. And obviously, if we went back to the Roman days, our technology would appear like magic to them. So I do believe that the universe being upwards of 5 billion years old, somehow that we would believe that we are the only species that has intelligence and has been able to put fire and iron together to create implements would be insane to think. So. Nobody like that answer?
That's
he muted our mics.
That's an excellent answer. I'm still processing.
No. Well, hopefully, because Putin looks like what the Colonel was saying, will probably release a couple nukes just to see what Biden's going to do. Sleepy Joe.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. So hopefully there's some truth to these UFOs stopping the nuclear warheads over in Montana, that maybe they'll step in and stop the nukes from lifting off from Russia.
So did you guys ever used to watch the X-Files?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I know a number of folks who are involved in that, and I can tell you from my experience from talking to folks that most of those episodes were based on real things going on.
Oh,
and
no way.
There's far more truth.
Really?
In the X-Files than people, I think, fully understand.
Well, best way to hide the truth is to put it into a.
Now I want to rewatch it.
Go back and I mean,
because of the research.
Agent Doggett. All right, sorry.
The research they did was pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, Tony, I just want to. I'm hearing all this stuff, alien shit and stuff. I just want to say one thing. Do you believe that they are already among us? Like I could be an alien. I feel like sometimes, like, what if one of us let's say one of us in the round table is not from Earth, and for some reason we do not know that. Do you think like over time, like we're gonna like realize or be told, not like superpower type shit, but like kind of find out in some way if we are not from here, we will figure it out or somehow like, because I believe that people who are not from Earth are among us in our form. So
the answer is the universe is a mysterious place that so. I wouldn't. I don't doubt. I don't know. I mean, if I was an alien, I couldn't tell you guys. I mean, that would be kind of giving up the whole game, right? You know. So
no game. Come on.
So
2023.
No, but there's far more. I think there's to your point to what Paul was saying. I think if there are species out there who understand how civilizations develop, and again, the universe is 5 billion years old. So I suspect if there is a bigger civilization than us, they have something like the Prime Directive. They have something that kind of gives them some level of order and understanding. And based on what I've been told by guys that apparently study this stuff, there's a plethora of aliens which are out there doing things. There's good and bad in their spheres, just like there's good and bad in our spheres. And yeah, I think often if they do this, I'm not saying they do it. If they do it, if they come down amongst us, I think they come down to do things to find out what things are like to be human and all that, to experience things.
So I did have one last question to ask, if you guys don't mind. The Anunnaki, all right? Am I pronouncing that right? Anunnaki, the people.
Anunnaki.
Anunnaki.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, aliens? Because people say that that's a group of a species of aliens that were put on Earth, and that we're descendants from that group.
Well, let me ask the way I'm going to answer. Let me answer this the way that I think makes the most sense. If you look back, Graham Chapman, right? Is it Graham that does all the looks back and all the artifacts they found in history that don't match up with the timelines?
Yeah, I love this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He did a series recently. So I went to a few years ago, in 2013. I had to go to Egypt. I was on a delegation with Bud McFarlane, my good friend Bud, before God rest his soul, he passed last year. We were there to help the Egyptians sort out their revolution. Al-Sisi had just removed the leader, and we're trying to help go through it. So one of the opportunities I had was to actually go into the pyramid of Giza, the Giza pyramid, and the idea that ancient men and women, mostly men, could have put together these structures using papyrus and trees just does not cover it for me. I mean, and then one of these slabs over by, if you guys look at the pictures around the Sphinx, there's small rooms. One of these stones, a whole stone, the perspective you just don't get unless you're there to see it. A stone that was put on top of these rooms was 100 tons. One stone was 100 tons. We couldn't move that today. There's just no way you can move one perfect stone.
Well, that's the black stones, and there was a couple of them, those big old giant ones. That's crazy.
If we cannot explain the obvious artifacts which exist that we as 21st century human beings could not move, and yet some people with donkeys and papyrus and were able to do this, there's a disconnect. I just, it's not rational to think somehow that individuals who lack the technology we have could have done more. I don't see how it's rational to believe that somehow that other things didn't exist. Another thing, have you all been to, I don't know if you've been to Ireland. I had some.
I have.
So there's some places. There's some places. If you go out into the countryside, you find these old buildings, really old. I mean, thousands. We're talking probably 5,000 years old. And I couldn't help but notice on a couple of them that the stone looks like it was melted. Do you all understand what kind of temperatures have to be created to melt stone? And this is like melted, like a candle wax melting. So again, ancient man didn't have that kind of. It's like, so again, just by the things I've seen personally, they can't be explained by any technology ancient man had within the time frame we're talking within about its last 2,000 to 3,000 years. So there's something more there, and I think people, for whatever reason, are reluctant to talk about that. And I do believe that relates to the Anunnaki and other things which have happened well beyond the history of mankind. I think we're fooling ourselves to think that somehow history only goes back 3,000 years.
There's just places all over the world that have the same towers and the same structures.
Right.
and they all match. And it's
I don't
like,
understand why people just can't open their mind. I just don't get it because, okay, so what? Maybe history goes back further than we recognize. And then
maybe there was technology back before
yeah,
we had technology. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? I mean, I'm sure it's all buried.
Like lost
and all washed
technology.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I'm going to butcher this. The Bhagavad Gita, is that what it was? Oppenheimer quoted it. I become death.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Chinese proverb he was quoting, or not a Chinese proverb. It was an ancient Greek proverb, wasn't it?
No,
I have become the destroyer of worlds.
The Bhagavad Gita, the Indian.
Yes, yeah.
So anyway,
destroyer of worlds.
Destroyer of worlds. I become the destroyer of worlds. So I just think people need to open their mind up to the things which we can observe directly. It's not like you can go to Egypt and you can see this 100,000 ton. You can go to Ireland and see these melted stones and these other artifacts all over the world. So I think we need to open up our minds to think about things a bit more than what we have or what we've been taught to think. If they're willing to lie about COVID, what are they not willing to lie about?
Makes a point.
True. Yeah. Yep.
No.
I lie about a lot of crap.
What do you mean no?
No.
Why are you saying no? Are you just saying no? What are you talking about? Something
I'm
else?
just saying no to opposite of yes.
You try not to choke. You're talking to yourself.
I'm just talking.
Don't do it, Tony.
I'm having a moment.
Hey, they just don't know if they.
Does anybody else have a question that hasn't had a chance to ask the question because of regular Dave and
my dumb ass? Speak up, guys.
Ron, you're muted. Ron, unmute yourself, Ron.
Ron, let's get Ron here. Where's Ron?
There you go.
We got Ron.
Yeah, what?
There he is.
There you go. We can hear you.
There you are.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Welcome to the sanitarium.
Yeah, we can
Yes,
hear
Ron.
you.
Oh, okay.
You're on, Ron.
I
You're
just
on.
wanted to ask Tony. Tony, you mentioned earlier about timelines in the multiverse.
Yeah.
I'm somewhat familiar with that concept, but I'd like your take on it.
So, I'm not a physicist. My degrees are in environmental studies and political science. So it's not like I'm learning. I've done my best to understand the quantum. So I think at the quantum level, if you look at things like the way matter behaves at the quantum level, everything comes down to information, energy. Everything is energy. Everything we've got here is energy equals mc squared and all that. So if you get below that, if you go to the quark level, there's all sorts of possibilities. And is it the Heisenberg principle? And there's all these things which exist, I believe, which indicate that the universe is far more complex than what we understand it to be. And I do believe in God. I do believe that that we have a destiny to go to. I think we all have things that we sign up to do before we get here. I think we do have a soul. I think we have things that we have to learn lessons to move forward in our progression. And I think the multiverse is something that exists for souls to go through and have the opportunity to learn and to have opportunities. And so one of the questions is how can free will and predetermination or fate exist? How can that happen? And I think that can happen through the multiverse, because the multiverse gives all sorts of possibilities to all sorts of people to do things. So you can be fated to do something, I believe. At the same time, you can have free will to do something or not do something. And I think that's why you have so many vectors that things can go off in. And I think what someone said, if anything can in some instances, everything that can happen does happen in all the different vectors of the multiverse. And I do believe that that's why so many things can happen out of it. I don't believe in a universe that's very static. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but it's the best I can
That's a great
do
answer, Tony. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Great answer.
So I got one last one. Will Russia and China ever go to war again, or are they waiting to team up on us?
So that's a great question. So China and Russia are natural enemies. They've never gotten along. If you go back and look at the Soviet Union and Mao, even, I just watched a video earlier today. I was doing some research on how the Chinese got the bomb. Khrushchev and the Russians gave them some of the clues, but then their relations broke down because the Soviets figured out maybe we don't want the Chinese to have a bomb after all. As a matter of fact, John F. Kennedy actually reached out to Khrushchev, and they tried to figure out a way. U.S. offered to work with the Russians to stop the Chinese from getting a bomb. So I'm just trying to illustrate the complexity of the relationship. The Chinese, I think, are actually Han. The Han, as a people, as a culture, believe that they are the the superior race on the planet. Does that sound familiar? I think certain folks thought this about themselves back in the 30s. So the Chinese really do believe this. So they will deal with anyone they think that they can make a temporary partnership with to continue to expand and reestablish the Chinese way of dominance. So this is why I don't believe people can just, the Chinese are just, they are a threat, because I think they see themselves in many ways the same way Hitler saw the Aryan race. And the Han, that's why the Han subjugate other Chinese under them. Look this up. I am not making this up. There's a number of books which actually illustrate this. So I do believe that they will deal with Putin. Putin has something they need, oil. I mentioned this earlier. They need energy. They have a huge economy that has to have oil, and we know it too. And we know the Indians and the Australians. I'm on Channel 9 TV all the time with the Australians. The Chinese know that if we get upset, we can shut off their oil from the Middle East because they have maybe a 2 to 3 week supply in a given time. If they can set up permanent pipelines with Putin, that'll give them a great resource that they're definitely going to need. But ultimately, even if they prevail, the Chinese prevail, ultimately they're going to have a conflict with the Russians down the road. But we are the biggest threat to them right now, the United States, and the orders-based international structure that was established after World War II. And that's what they're out to do. And they're out to undermine our currency as well. But that's another story. So
that sounds it's like run for some fun.
Well, look, I'm not a neocon. I don't think we should be looking for a fight, but I'm just saying if you don't stand up and if you see a bully coming, you dare not show fear or back down. So I think that's where we're at right now.
Well, I think China can take us over by simply just turning off TikTok. Imagine the people that would melt if TikTok was gone one morning. That would just be the end of everybody's lives.
They could take over the White House by turning off Joe Biden's artificial brain, positonic network.
Well, I think his little head face plants are doing really well alone.
Hey, Colonel, do you think there's a possibility of a non-nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia ever? Yeah. I mean, without nukes on the table, a conventional war?
Let me tell you a little secret. NATO and the United States are not ready to go to war. I know we have the largest budget in the planet. The military is not ready for it. We're just not. Let me give you a stat real quick. I had to do this the other day. During World War II, we had 12.2 million people in uniform. 12.2 million people. That's a lot of people in uniform. And we won the war, obviously. We had 7 4-star generals. Now we have approximately 1.1 million people in uniform and 44 4-star generals. Does that sound like we're in better shape now than we were in World War II with all those generals and no teeth?
Top heavy as hell.
So that's why my point is that we have spent so much money making ourselves weak by endless research and development programs. The F-35's not going to do it's the most expensive weapons program in history. The F-35 will not perform on the battlefield, just saying. So a conventional war, we're not ready for it. And even if we brought all of NATO to bear against Russia, I don't think we would do well. NATO is not ready for war. To me, any war is folly at this point, and there's really no reason for it. I think there's other ways to deal with these things. Look, I've been to war. People dying is it's difficult, and my war wasn't as bad as some other wars that people have been in. So people romanticize war all the time. If you go watch Saving Private Ryan, Apocalypse Now, there's things out there that I don't think civilized people really want to deal with. If we have to, we should, but it's not something we should seek. And I don't think there's any reason for us right now to be considering war.
Do you think sanctions are still a
no? Sanctions aren't working. No,
doesn't work.
They don't. They knew they were coming and they planned around. Plus, Joe Biden's been bought off and he's given half a dozen waivers to those who paid him money before he became president. So there's oligarchs which are not being touched right now. So.
So, do you think we'll ever find common ground with? I mean, we've been enemies with Russia for at least 100 years, it seems. Do you think we'll ever find common ground?
I think there is common ground. I actually recommended back in the early 2000s that we should have done a rapprochement with Russia, and focused on going after global targets, terrorism targets, like the radical jihadis, political Islam, the terrorists. And there was an opportunity then that we missed out on. So the one thing I would say, we have to respect what they believe their sphere of influence is. The Russians are paranoid. They've been invaded by a number of groups, people, organizations, Napoleon, Hitler. They're just not going to be open to the idea of NATO, no matter how benign we think it is, being on its border. And Ukraine is not going to. They're just never going to permit that to happen. They will literally go to war with Europe if that happens. So, and I don't think we'll win at this point. We're not ready.
As far as the jihadi thing goes, I'm sure you're well aware of it, but there's a huge difference between the Sunnis and the Shiites.
Absolutely.
Do you think we should make it more obvious, which side we should favor? Because I think a lot of people just seem to have no clue about it.
So the Sunni and Shia, that's a great point, and a lot of people don't understand that the Sunni are essentially the Saudi Arabians. The Shia are the Iranians, and it's a very interesting split that goes back to the beginning of Islam. And I've said for a long, it's like we shouldn't be in the middle of it. It's not our deal. It really isn't. I deal with with a number of non-violent Islamic groups. One of them being in England, the Association of British Muslims. Mohammed, if he's listening, God bless you. I've dealt with these guys. They want to take violence out of their religion altogether. They don't believe that violence, which both Sunni and Shiites are open to, is a way of resolving their religious differences. President Al-Sisi of Egypt actually called for a reform to all the clerics of the Sunni faith in Egypt, saying we need to reform our own religion to remove violence as a means of pushing our concepts. And it wasn't received well, just saying. But I think that's something we should stay out of as much as we can. The problem is this: both the Sunni and Shia are seeking to have nuclear weapons. The Iranians want it, the Shia. The Sunni, the Saudis have already bought theirs. By the way, the Saudis already bought their nuclear weapons. They're sitting in warehouses in Rawalpindi in Pakistan. They've paid the Pakistanis for them, and they purchased Chinese delivery systems, missiles that they can mount them on. So the moment there's a credible weapon that the Iranians have, the Saudis are going to arm up, and they're going to be a nuclear power too. We know this. This is not like we don't know this. So that's why I'm just not sure us being in the middle of that's going to work out well for us. Should we try to deter? Yeah, we should. I don't think it's in our interest to have countries who don't like us having nuclear weapons, but that's the equation that we're faced with right now. So both that there's a potential for a nuclear arms race between those two nations, or those two religious sects within the Middle East.
We've doubled down with Saudi Arabia though for 80 plus years.
Yeah, they are our chosen ally. That's correct. I'm not saying that that's Tony Shaffer's my belief. That is what the U.S. policy is. They're the chosen partner. By the way, the Iranians are Persians. I don't know if you know this. There's a distinct difference between Arabs and Persians.
Absolutely.
Persians are very European. They're very much they would rather be shopping in Paris than doing jihad. And
they seem historically they seem if there's a less violent of the two or a less radical of the two, it seems like the Persians were less
I tend
radical.
to agree with you. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Absolutely.
So I mean, I don't know. I don't want to sound, I was a Marine. I'm a patriot, but at the same time, it seems like we've been on the wrong side of things, and it's only because of Saudi oil.
The oil has been the biggest issue driving us since the 70s. Absolutely, no doubt. No doubt. And by the way, I think you all know this. You guys are all smart. We could be the net exporter that eclipses the planet on oil and on fuel. We could be the net global dominator of that. And we're making the political choice not to be that. And then if you wanted to fund the war with Putin, go to maximum capacity to pump and take the bottom out of oil. And by the way, one of my degrees are environmental studies. Fossil fuel essentially is a renewable resource. There are things in the planet. There's processes in the planet within the interior which continue to generate fossil fuels. They aren't from the dinosaurs. We simply do not understand the complexity of the geology of the planet sufficient to know that things are going to continue to be generated just because of the immense forces in the mantle of the planet. So every time you hear these knuckleheads say, "Oh, global warming," it's like global warming. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. And anytime you talk, these guys talk about it, they're going to have to strip mine countries to get all the cobalt and lithium, and then 90% of any electric car is still petrochemicals. The plastics are all from fossil fuels, so it's all a fiction. And anytime they try to push us on, it's just we have sufficient oil probably to last us at least another 500 years based on the way the planet produces this as a resource. So it's not going to run out, and we're not damaging the planet by refining it and having it come out.
They're also saying there's huge lithium stores in Nevada, that there's going to be the next big gold rush is in Nevada.
Huge ones in Oregon. Oregon has huge resources, but nobody wants to mine them here because you mine them here, they go off to China for processing and they come back. So.
Yeah, need to start making things in our own country again.
But we're all supposed to have electric cars here soon, so
they're fast. They are faster. You can't beat them. They are faster.
But if you move the economy to 30% electric cars, you will literally crash the grid and never build. They're not going to be able to build the grid quick enough to meet their insane demands of moving the economy to electric vehicles. And plus, diesel locomotives, tanks,
ships.
Did you see the Grand Home? Oh, we're just going to have military. It's like, no, I'm sorry. Extreme hot, extreme cold, they don't work.
You're always going to need fossil fuels for things like jet aircraft and ships and things like that. But as far as the small oil go, Tesla proved that electricity is faster. So I mean, there's a place for both.
Some applications, I have no problem with that. I got a degree in environmental studies. I have no problem with renewables, but you cannot convert your entire economy to renewables because there's no such thing as renewable.
No, it's renewable. Like everything in life, there needs to be a balance. Absolutely. What makes sense should be which way we go.
One thing renewable is the Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
Well, you support the Obamas if you do that. Just saying. So.
Oh, I don't have Netflix. Don't worry.
Amazon, Netflix.
I have Amazon. I'm guilty on that, but I'm sure a little bit of money is going to Obama and Michael. So, but anyways, 10:30. Tony Shaffer, thank you for coming on. We went a half hour over. I know.
No, I enjoyed the conversation, guys. I appreciate the questions. That were very interesting. So it was fun. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we had a very excellent time.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
But, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. But, do you have any more books? Have any more books coming up you can talk about real quick before we get off here?
Right now I'm actually running two think tanks. Project Sentinel, which is we're trying to basically return us to constitutional governance. By the way, do you guys, where does it say in the Constitution the government can tell me what car to buy, or what light bulb to build, or what authorizes them to be the purveyor of student loans? Do you know what amendment to the Constitution? We believe that the federal government's amassed far too much power for its own good, and we fund it. So we're basically Project Sentinel is we're trying to get people to wake up to understand that a big government, a big leviathan of government, is not something that is going to help us out. And you look at what the government did with COVID, for example. I think we all recognize the damage that can be done by bad policy. So that's one of our main focuses right now. And I'm producing some new TV. I can't talk about it yet because it's not under contract, but you guys may hear announcements and not do this in the future about a new series I'll be producing. So that's hopefully around the corner if everything goes well over the next month.
Yeah, sounds great. Just keep us posted, and we can
I will.
talk about that. All right.
Well, thanks, guys.
Well, thanks for coming on the Sanitarium. Saturday night. It's late. The round table's wrapping up. Thank you, Ron, Terry, which didn't say anything at all. We got Phil, Wrangler Dave, with some good points, good questions. Paul Dale Roberts up there chilling, a.k.a. Vigo. All you see is his head the whole episode. Wish just Paul's head just like that. All right. You guys have a good night, and thank you for watching the Sanitarium.
Thanks, Face.
All right. Thank
Later.
you. Everybody.
Peace. Later.